Hello and welcome. Tonight, Nigeria Labour Congress defies federal government's objection, stages nationwide protests in solidarity with striking academic staff union of universities. House Deputy Speaker says 44 reports filed by DSS before attack on Kujay Correctional Centre as lawmakers move to remove any CBN governor and other directors of the bank found to be involved in partisan politics. Plus, as terrorists make inroad into the nation's seat of power in their attacks, we take a look at what seems to be a clear and present danger.
On business news tonight, International Monetary Fund cuts its 2022 and 2023 global growth projections amid continued rise in country's inflation.
On sports news tonight, South Africa's Banyana receive a hero's welcome from hundreds of supporters in Johannesburg following their victory at the Women's Africa Cup of Nations.
And from Abuja, President Buhari writes Senate seeking confirmation of Justice Ulukayode Ariwala as CJN, 4 nominees as CBN non-executive directors, and 19 nominees as resident electoral commissioners.
And in international news from London, the US has urged China to put more pressure on Myanmar following the military junta's execution of 4 democracy activists.
It's been a day of protest by members of the Nigeria Labour Congress in solidarity with the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, following the over 4-month strike embarked upon by university lecturers. It wants to express their outrage over what they describe as the indifference of the government regarding the plight of the lecturers. From the south to the north, the protesters poured onto the streets calling for urgent action. Let's begin from Lagos, where our correspondent Olu Phillips monitored the action, with human rights lawyer Femi Falana joining the protest.
It's been long coming. The seesaw between the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities may have reached a breakpoint. Very early in the day, the Ikeja roundabout in Lagos began to swell with unionists from allied associations of the Nigerian Labour Congress. As they gathered in fulfillment of their resolve to host a nationwide protest in solidarity with the plight of the ASU and Nigerian students who have been relieved of classwork in over 150 days, security officials also converged. Reminiscent of the days of labor struggles against government policies or decision, the labor unions seem to have found their voices. A promise made and promise kept. Days ago, they said this would happen if government did nothing about the continuous pushback on matters affecting ASU and the educational sector of the country. From tens, they grew into hundreds, marching the streets of Ikeja, chanting slogans, displaying banners and placards with inscriptions to fit, playing songs of conscious music artists, as expected of such outings on a busy central business district area, it did cause traffic, but one that did not agitate affected motorists.
I wish I could have a place to park. I would join them. Do you understand? Because I think we have gotten to that point that we can no longer hold it. Do you get? Even the so-called people that are supporting this president, what is going on, they are feeling it.
From Allen Junction, where Mr. Falana made a surprise appearance and joined the rally, it's an onward movement to the government house, where they met some initial resistance from policemen. After prevailing on them to see the struggle as a collective one and for the common good of all, the gates were eventually flung open. With no state official to receive them, some legs started getting tired from long waiting, while others continue to insist that no one leaves until state government shows up. The government finally shows up to receive the letter of demand.
To end the current strike, so that our children can go back to school.
Thank you once again for leading a peaceful protest in Lagos State. I'm sure that when the governor comes back, he will attend to every single matter that is here in accordance with the powers that he holds as the state governor of Lagos State.
After a session of presenting and accepting the document, they started to retreat, but leaving some ultimatum for the federal government.
Our statement is simple. This is just a warning protest rally. If the government fails to conclude all the negotiation and agreements with all the workers in our tertiary institution within the frame of 2 weeks that they have promised that they will conclude it, then NSAS will be a child's play in the country.
We must get the president pressurized to address the problems of the country before he rushes back home. And if he's tired, as he is saying, we'll urge him to go back home and rest and take care of his health so that this country can be allowed, to return to sanity. Right now, there's no governance in Nigeria. And that is why you can have a strike in the university system for 5 months. It's unacceptable.
There are a few days left of the 2 weeks window laid out by the government. Two scenarios are likely. It's either ASU returns to the classroom or starts preparation for that, or unions will move against the federal government. It's not difficult to tell the options many would want to see. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
In other parts of the South, the protesters also converged on strategic locations across the state capitals to press home their demands amid calls for better management of the university system.
The protest walk kicked off early in Ondo State as unionists converged on the Adegbemile Junction in Akure, the state capital, marching along the major highways of the city in a peaceful manner. Chairman of the Ondo State chapter of NLC and the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Federal University of Technology, Akure, were unhappy with the federal government's disposition towards ASU.
They are not asking for something selfish. They are asking for the improvement in our university system, so that we'll not be graduating mediocres and half-baked graduates.
In a nation where they cannot pay 30,000 naira minimum wage, and one individual can embezzle 170 billion naira, we have to tell this government, enough is enough. And nobody should tell Nigerians that there is no money in Nigeria.
In Ogun, protesters turned out in their numbers as members marched through major streets in the state capital, Abeokuta, demanding unconditional implementation of the agreement reached with members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities.
Here we are today to take our destiny in our own hands. And that is why NLC, after so many moves to ensure that the dispute between the federal government and the university workers is resolved, and it appears the government is not serious about this. And that is why this protest is being carried out nationwide.
It was a similar scenario in the southeast, with members of the Ebonyi State chapter of the Congress, along with leaders of affiliate bodies, marching from the Congress Secretariat through major highways of the state capital, chanting solidarity songs.
We join all other states, including Abuja, to say that the federal government should be first and make our children to go back to.
And it was carnival-like in Cross River State as members of the NLC marched through the streets of the capital, Calabar, bearing placards with inscriptions signaling their demands. President of the state NLC criticized the federal government's handling of the issues.
We are grieved, and the NLC has asked, the national body has asked that everybody should come out and support ASU in order to compel government to ensure that our children get back to school. That is why we are here.
The labor union also turned up in Enugu State, converging on the Enugu State House under the watchful eyes of security operatives. As the strike exceeds the 5th month, with many seeking a solution, all eyes will be on the federal government, mindful of President Buhari's directive to the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, to resolve the prolonged industrial action.
Up north, members of the Nigeria Labour Congress also joined their counterparts in the Academic Staff Union of Universities to call attention to the lingering industrial action by university lecturers. The workers who gathered in various state capitals demanded the immediate resolution of the impasse to enable students return to school.
Officials of the Nigeria Labour Congress and their members take to the streets in the north to identify with the striking members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities. The workers lament the negative impact of the strike, but the governors of Nasarawa, Zamfara and Kogi states pledged their intervention.
We will do whatever it takes to ensure we support the universities. This time around, we have paid them their salaries even though they were not in classes. There are some states that said that ASU will not be paid as long as they were not there. I informed the management that as long as you have the money, we will continue to give you whatever it is that we are giving you.
For them to make this rally, I'm not saying anything bad about it. So it is good that Mr. President and also the minister should at least try to see how we can have a dialogue between we and us.
I believe His Excellency will join his colleague governors to continue put pressure on the federal government led by President Muhammadu Buhari, the ministers of education, ministers of labor, to ensure that this strike is called off and our students move to their schools and resume their life.
In Taraba State, the protesters were barricaded when they approached the government house. However, they succeeded in tendering their protest letter to the government officials, while their counterparts in Maiduguri and Adamawa blamed the protests on non-implementation of signed agreement.
Enough is enough. Let our children go back to school. Staying at home for long, it will make some students to go a way that is not good.
And on behalf of majority of Nigerians who have no voices, we now serve as their credible voice to say that, sir, we will have a message to give to you for onward transmission to His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who some days ago, enough is enough.
Protesters in Katsina, Bauchi and Kaduna also joined in the Solidarity March. The demand by the Nigeria Labour Congress during the Solidarity protest with members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, however, received a boost from the Benue State government, which pledged to work with other states to interface with the federal government for an early resolution to the industrial action.
In part two, after the break, NLC President defends protest with ASU. We'll also bring you an update on the state of affairs in some public universities in the country as the strike lingers. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Nigeria Labour Congress defies federal government's objection, stages nationwide protest in solidarity with striking academic staff union of universities. House Deputy Speaker says 44 reports were filed by DSS before attack on Kujay Correctional Centre as the lawmakers move to remove any CBN governor and other directors of the bank found to be involved in partisan politics. As terrorists make inroad into the nation's seat of power in their attacks, we take a look at what seems to be a clear and present danger. And US has urged China to put more pressure on Myanmar following military junta's execution of 4 democracy activists. The president of the NLC, Mr. Ayuba Waba, has been defending the right of the union to protest in solidarity with ASU against the federal government's objection to the action, which it described as illegal. Mr. Waba, who was a guest on our breakfast program Sunrise Daily, maintains that ASU is an affiliate of the NLC, so they share in their pain.
The protest first is to show our concern and also call for urgent action to resolve the issues. We took 2 levels of decision. First is the national protest to call for attention and for the issue to be resolved promptly. And the next level is 3 days national warning strike. If nothing has happened after the protest, to actually show our grievances, and these are democratic norms everywhere around the world. Even as an individual, you have the right to hear your grievances. It's within the provision of our law. It's backed by UN Charter for Human and People's Rights, African Charter for Human and People's Rights. It's there in our Constitution, Section 3940, and even the courts have pronounced that you don't require any permission. So it's legal. It's within your fundamental right to protest in issues. And even you remember within COVID, even with the challenge of COVID, with the global public health emergency, that right have not been taken away from any citizen. Citizens protest, even within COVID. You see it around the world. Because it's a fundamental right. So it's legal. So when people say it's illegal or I think people should also remember, no condition is permanent. I can tell you very soon, we'll be actually launching the NLC at 40 document. You have pictures there, particularly page 85, where you have our current political elites joining NLC in similar action in the past to try to press for action to address some of those fundamental issues of development.
Meanwhile, public university classrooms have remained shut for months following the industrial action by ASU. A visit to some of the universities by our correspondents across the country shows the lull in activities in these ivory towers. Some of the students who spoke to us lament the prolonged strike.
The silence in the classrooms is deafening across the country in public universities. From the University of Benin in Edo State to the University of Abuja in the nation's capital, the once bubbling citadels of learning with thousands of students pursuing one academic degree or the other are now a shadow of themselves as lecturers are nowhere to be found. The students have also deserted the institutions, at least for now. Some students bearing placards joined the solidarity protest led by Nigeria Labour Congress to express their dissatisfaction with the impasse between their lecturers and the federal government.
So it's high time for us to fight for our right, and we are demanding with immediate effect. We don't want even this 2 weeks ultimatum that the president has given. We want only 1 day for us to get back to our classes, for the peaceful atmosphere for our country, for our state, and for the good of the student of Nigeria.
Actually, we are the concerned because we are the student, we represent the student within the North. So we feel it or we deem it, it is even our responsibility. So we consider the NLC as a solidarity factor to us. So we consider this to be our very own burden and responsibility to do it. And that is why we are here and we frontier the activity, the protest today, and we also come out in hundreds tomorrow to demonstrate this in the street about his state.
The Nnamdi Azikiwe University in Awka, capital of Anambra State, is closed, as well as the University of Lagos. The roads are lonely and the classrooms are under lock and key. A peep through the window into the classroom shows dusty chairs and desks, clear evidence that the classrooms have not been used for any academic activities for some time.
We should address these agreements comprehensively to prevent a strike in the next decade. It's not good. In fact, I'm ashamed to be part of the system that is this badly disrupted. But we don't have a choice. So in the agreement that is being negotiated now, we want government to show commitment such that in a long time from now, after this one is called off, we will not experience a strike.
Recall the ongoing strike began on the 14th of February 2022. 5 months down the road, students are getting wary of the situation and want action to be taken to address the deadlock.
And away from the NLC Solidarity Strike, our correspondent in Abuja, Linda Kujay, brings us more stories. Hi, Linda. Good to see you.
Hello, Millicent. Good to see you too. We begin with the aviation sector. Against the backdrop of the prevailing crisis in the aviation industry, the federal government says it is considering measures to address the situation. Speaking during a meeting with airline operators of Nigeria in Abuja, the Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, reveals plans to approach the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to get aviation fuel at a controlled price for operators. The minister also plans to approach the CBN to secure foreign exchange at the official rate for the operation of the airlines.
The government has been magnanimous enough to give us some allocation to airline operators of Nigeria. In the past, I remember there was 10,000 metric ton of the product was given to the airline. That helped at a controlled price, controlled meaning that the landing price plus their cost and a bit of margin, and that helped the sector. So that we will approach government through NNPC and Duke Oil to ensure that that is sustained and that is made available. And the users of Jet A1, it's civil aviation and civil aviation only. So we would approach and try to get that done. And the foreign exchange, of course, you know where it sits. It's at the Central Bank and, of course, the Ministry for Planning, Finance and Budget and National Planning, and the Central Bank of Nigeria. Primarily, those are the sources. In the past, they had helped, but because of the significance and the importance of the sector, we would approach and ensure that we are able to get this foreign exchange at the official rate. That will help significantly the sector. I can assure you that if the right policies are in place, we're able to get foreign exchange, we're able to get Jet A1, we're able to do one or two things. You see that the difference between the price of a bus, luxurious bus from Abuja to Lagos, and that of flying will be so minimal. And that will now make professional flight increase in the country and people will fly more.
Outside the shores of the country, the president is appealing to leaders in West Africa to do everything within their powers to ensure that elections are conducted in their countries in an atmosphere of transparency, as this is the only way the sub-region can be insulated from the scourge of unconstitutional takeover of powers. President Buhari made this call in a goodwill message to the government and people of Liberia as he joined other world leaders in Monrovia on the occasion of the 175th independence anniversary of the West African nation. His senior special advisor on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, explains in a statement that President Buhari called on Liberia, Sierra Leone and countries set for the national elections in 2023, same as Nigeria, to ensure peace and stability in their countries and the sub-region. In the words of the president, we are working towards a free, fair, transparent, credible and acceptable outcome of elections and their results. He called for the deepening of democracy and good governance in the sub-region. And back here in the National Assembly, a bill to ensure non-partisanship of top officials of the Central Bank of Nigeria, including the governor, deputy governors and directors, has scaled second reading in the House of Representatives. The bill is seeking their removal from office should they become partisan. Meanwhile, the House is debunking the rumors of plans to impeach the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila. Our correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
Respected colleagues,
The first business of the day is...
The Deputy Speaker presides over Tuesday's plenary in the absence of the Speaker, who in the past few days has been the subject of an alleged impeachment plot over the controversial Water Resources Bill. According to online reports, the Northern Caucus of the House plans to impeach the Speaker to allow the passage of the Water Resources Bill, which was killed in the 8th Senate and last year in the House of Representatives, for seeking to bring all water resources in the country under the control of the federal government. The leader of the Northern Caucus in the House moves a motion of privilege, debunking the impeachment claims.
This is a figment of imagination. It has never happened anywhere. And it is an attempt to divide this country along ethnic, religious, and tribal lines, which I think we should grow over that by now.
Members will be given copies. Let them go and read, go through. When issues even regarding as to whether governor sanction or whatever, they will say the procedure of the House, and that was the ruling of the Speaker, was going to be followed strictly.
We don't even know where we are, whether today or even before we leave, here may be invaded. That should be our concern. The issue of whether thank God Musa said it, whoever that is dreaming about it, it remains a dream.
The matter is then referred to the Committee on Ethics and Privileges for further investigation. Meanwhile, lawmakers moved to address the controversy surrounding the partisanship of the central bank governor by considering a bill to amend the CBN Act.
A person shall not remain a governor, deputy governor, or director of the bank if he is a member of a political party or a partisan or involved in partisan politics. Why did I do this? Today, the credibility of CBN in custody of sensitive election materials is being questioned.
The bill scales second reading while a motion calling on the federal government to halt the proposed ban on motorcycles suffers defeat following an appeal by the Deputy Speaker.
There is no community that one attack or the other that will happen that you will not have an intel. And this is part of the intel that they have given as to what is going to happen or might be happening. And so we have to cooperate with government. You cannot imagine what is happening today in Abuja. I will be frank with you. I went through DSS report. 44 reports were given before the attack of Kujay.
The mover of the motion, Honorable Abubakar Yalaman, had prayed the House to urge the federal government to restrict the ban to local governments where banditry and terrorism are rife, saying a total ban would affect the well-being and welfare of Nigerians if palliative measures are not put in place. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, International Monetary Fund cuts its 2022 and 2023 global growth projections amid continued rise in country's inflation. That's in business news. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. In the upper legislative chamber, the Senate has received a formal request from the President to confirm the nomination of Justice Ulukayode Ariwala as the Chief Justice of Nigeria. The request was contained in a letter read by Senate President Ahmad Lawan during today's plenary session. President Buhari appointed Justice Ariwala as acting CJN following the resignation of former Chief Justice Tanko Muhammad on June the 27th, 2022. The Senate has also received two other requests from President Buhari to confirm the reappointment of 4 nominees as non-executive directors of the Board of the Central Bank of Nigeria, as well as a confirmation of 19 nominees as resident electoral commissioners for the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC.
Confirmation of appointment. In accordance with Section 10, Subsection 3A of the Central Bank of Nigeria Establishment Act 2007, I have the pleasure to present the following nominees for confirmation by the Senate for appointment as non-executive directors of the Board of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Number 1, Professor Mike Idiahi Obadan, South-South Zone. Professor Justicia Odinaka Chukwu Nnabuko, Southeast. Professor Ahmed Jalingo, Northeast. Mr. Adiola Adetunji, Southwest. Please accept, distinguished Senate President, the assurances of my highest consideration. Yours sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari.
That's all from Abuja. Back to you, Millicent.
Many thanks, Linda. To legal matters, the Federal High Court in Abuja has adjourned till August the 12th hearing in a suit instituted by the People's Democratic Party challenging the substitution of the running mates of the Labour Party LP and the All Progressives Congress APC. In the suit, the PDP claims that the 2022 Electoral Act did not make provisions for a placeholder or temporary running mate. The running mates whose substitution are being challenged are Donyo Kujay of the LP and Kabiru Masari of the APC.
Despite the commencement of the annual vacation of the Nigerian judiciary, the courtroom of Justice Donatus Okorowo is filled to its capacity with lawyers and members of the public who are here for cases of public interest. One of such cases is this one filed by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, challenging the substitution of Kabiru Masari and Donyo Kujay as placeholders or temporary running mates. The party is also contending that the presidential candidates of the APC and Labour Party can only qualify to contest next year's general election with Masari and Okukwe as their running mates. The PDP also claims that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, lacks the power to accept any withdrawal or substitution of Masari and Okukwe without their parties conducting fresh primaries to substitute Peter Obi and Bola Tinubu. At the proceedings, the PDP's counsel informed the court that the party had filed an application seeking to join more parties in the suit.
As at the time we filed the suit, they have not nominated any substantive running mate. Having done so now, we feel that the substantive running mates that have now been nominated should also come and let them be heard in the suit so that we don't determine the court does not determine the matter in their absence.
The counsel for the APC and the Labour Party, however, told the court that they have filed counter-applications challenging the jurisdiction of the court to hear the suit.
As defendants, we have also filed objections, preliminary objections, almost all the defendants in this matter, that the court lacks the jurisdiction to hear and determine the case of the plaintiff.
Seeing as jurisdiction is a threshold matter that ought to be determined first, the court has directed that the preliminary objections be heard. So we are waiting, or we are to await the reply of the plaintiffs to some of the preliminary objections filed by the other parties, after which the objection will be heard and the decision made.
Justice Donatus Okorowo subsequently adjourned the case to August 12 for hearing.
The body of benchers has held its scheduled meeting today without discussing the letter written by the Nigerian Bar Association NBA to its chairman, Chief Wole Olanipekun, asking him to step aside. The body had adjourned from its last emergency meeting of June the 21st, 2022 to today to discuss matters arising from the reports of some of its committees and arrangements for the quarter bar ceremony scheduled to hold tomorrow. Channels Television Judiciary correspondent Shola Shueli gathered that the meeting, which held in Abuja, was attended by about 30 members physically, with about 50 others joining virtually. The chairman of the body, Chief Olanipekun, attended physically and presided over the meeting. The president of the NBA, Olumide Akpata, who is also a member, attended the meeting virtually. Some members of the meeting who spoke off camera said discussions at the meeting were centered mainly on tomorrow's quarter bar ceremony. Owing to security concerns, the meeting agreed to shift the court ceremony from the Nigerian Law School Buhari, Abuja, to the Body of Benches Secretariat along the Airport Road in Jabi, also in the nation's capital. And talking about security in Abuja, residents are currently gripped with fear resulting from the recent moves by terrorists who government says are threatening to launch attacks on government schools and other public places in Abuja. The threat is coming after the attack on the Kujay Correctional Center, where several inmates escaped. Our next report takes a look at the security situation in the FCT, the challenges and solutions.
Abuja, Nigeria's capital city, regarded as a safe haven from various acts of criminality, including armed robbery, kidnapping and terrorism, appears to be losing this status at an unprecedented rate. Although pockets of criminal activities resulting in arrests by the police have been reported in recent times, the July 5th terrorist attack on the Kujay Correctional facility in the nation's capital sends new shockwaves down the spine of many Abuja residents. While many residents are yet to recover from the Kujay jailbreak experience, the Presidential Guards Brigade came under attack on the Buari-Dutse Road, just on the outskirts of the capital city, a situation that has brought the Federal Capital Territory security architecture under the spotlight.
With what we have seen, with all of the happenings that are going on, nobody has been fired, to the effect of negligence. They take their time to take decisions. Intelligence will be sent across to other agencies. It's hardly implemented, and nobody is punished for it. So it shows that the president, in quote, of the Federal Republic of Nigeria hasn't really been responsive as expected of a commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
Ordinarily, because it's Abuja, the guard of the brigade guard should have been taking that responsibility, because it's Abuja, that is where the president stays. So every aspect of security comes under them, irrespective of whether it's the duty of the police or the DSS. At the end of the day, they are the ones. So in this instance, they should have taken responsibility. But again, because there are other organizations that are also serving the same function, nobody was held accountable. And I think that's something that needs to change.
24 hours before the attack on the Guards Brigade, the federal government was forced to close the Federal Government College, Kwali, located on the outskirts of Abuja city. Analysts say these are critical moments that require firm government decisions that will change the narrative for the better.
For the reason why we're seeing what we're seeing is because of the absence of accountability. Kaduna happened, nobody has been held accountable till date. Because there is no accountability, people that are serving within that sector don't fear that there will be consequences for their inability to carry out functions. So I think these are the reasons. The intelligence is there, frankly, but again, the failure to use that intelligence.
The terrorists can never win. We will always win. But we will win when we come together. We will win when we have trust and confidence in our security agencies. We will win when the response is strong and it will send clear message. But I expect now that there should be storming of suspected places.
Security is a major concern for residents across the country. It is a challenge that many want the government to face and address squarely once and for all.
It's now time for some business news. Here's Anne Wilder. Thank you, Millicent. Hello and welcome to Business News. We begin with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, cutting its global growth forecast for the year 2022 and 2023, tagging the world economic outlook as gloomy and more uncertain. In its World Economic Outlook for this month, released today, the International Financial Institution says that it now expects the global economy to grow by 3.2% this year before slowing further to a 2.9% GDP rate next year. The latest revision is coming amid higher than expected inflation around the world and slow recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, marking a 0.4% and 0.7 percentage points downgrade from its April projections. Meanwhile, the IMF has retained Nigeria's economic growth forecast for this year at 3.4%, which remains positive due to rising oil prices. The president of the African Development Bank, the AFDB Group, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, has given strong assurance to U.S. investors that Africa is a secure, competitive and profitable market for investment. Speaking at the U.S.-Africa Business Summit in Morocco, Dr. Adesina wants African investors to see Africa as a logical investment destination and to engage with the continent in a win-win partnership.
The African Development Bank
is mobilizing $20 billion for developing the desert of power in the Sahel, which will power the economies of 11 countries with solar and become the world's largest solar zone. From DRC, Morocco, Namibia, and Botswana, huge opportunities exist for green hydrogen, the fuel for the future. Africa, ladies and gentlemen, therefore offers a very profitable investment destination. Savvy investors know if you're not invested in Africa, you are really missing out on the world's leading investment opportunities frontier. And investors are paying attention, a lot of attention to Africa. The number of private equity funds in Africa grew from only 12 in 1997 to 150 by 2020. I am very positive about Africa's investment opportunities, and so should you. I really believe that this is the time for U.S. investors to rapidly move and invest massively in Africa. There's always a first mover advantage, and opportunities wait for no one.
The Federation Account Allocation Committee has shared a total of 802.4 billion naira for the month of June at the Federation Account revenue with the federal government, states and local government councils. The amount represents a 121.7 billion naira higher value when compared to 680.7 billion naira in the total revenue recorded in the month of May. Out of the total distributable revenue, which comprises distributable statutory revenue of 608.5 billion naira, the federal government received 292.7 billion naira, state governments got 148.5 billion naira, while local government councils pocketed 114.4 billion naira. At the same time, 52.7 billion naira was shared to relevant states as 13% derivation revenue, while the country's excess crude account balance stood at over $37 million as of June this year. Now let's head to the local market where more than 516 billion naira wiped off from the total value of listed equities at the close of trade today as number of decliners rose to 37 losers against 3 gainers. Laddie Williams has more.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, it's more downside today as profit-taking intensifies, making it a 6th consecutive day losing streak. And the best grip is stronger today as the all-share index loses the 51K level. Now, I'm watching that 50K level to see if it holds. MTN Nigeria stock is hit hard again today as investors take profit, losing about 20 naira 50 kobo to close at 192 naira. Quite incredible. We also see sell-offs with international breweries. The gainers counter quite lean today with Livestock Feed PLC topping that counter up 1.63%. We also see Tier 1 lender FBNH on that counter. The trio of Flour Mill, Transco and GTCO were top trades by volume today. Wow, so it's a second day of intense profit-taking this week. Fingers crossed for tomorrow. And that's the Stock Market Report. It's back to you.
And that's business news tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawodu. The rest of News at 10 continues now with Millicent. Thanks, Anne. Myanmar's military-led government has defended the execution of 4 pro-democracy activists, with the spokesperson calling it lawful and not personal. International condemnation continues to grow over the killings, even as the U.S. is pressuring China to condemn Myanmar. Elsewhere, European Union members have agreed to cut gas use in case Russia holds supplies, but some countries will have exemptions to avoid rationing. Simon Fusi has more on this and other international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The US has urged China to increase pressure on Myanmar following the military junta's execution of 4 democracy activists.
There can be no business as usual with this regime.
At a news conference, Ned Price called on countries to ban sales of military equipment to Myanmar and refrain from any action that would lend the junta any international credibility. It comes as hundreds of people protested outside the Myanmar embassy in Bangkok against the ruling military's execution of 4 democracy activists, as international outrage and condemnation grow. Large crowds of demonstrators chanted slogans and called for justice, while holding portraits of the executed activists and the deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi of the National League for Democracy Party. A spokesman for the ruling military defended the executions, saying they were legal and had been imposed due to the activists aiding terror acts by a civilian resistance movement. EU energy ministers have agreed for their countries to cut gas use in case Russia halts supplies. European Union ministers met to approve a weakened emergency proposal to curb their gas demand, with members agreeing that countries should voluntarily reduce gas use by 15% from August to March. The deal states gas demand reduction would become mandatory if security of supply reaches crisis levels. The Japanese government has carried out the death sentence of a man who went on a stabbing rampage in 2008. Tomohiro Kato, who was then 25, ran a truck into a busy Tokyo shopping district before going on a stabbing rampage, killing 7 people and injuring 10. Japan remains one of the few developed countries to retain the death penalty, despite international criticism. Taiwan's president has boarded a naval warship for only the 2nd time in her 6 years in office. Tsai Ing-wen lauded the military's determination to defend the island while overseeing its largest annual naval and air exercises amid rising military pressure from China. As part of Taiwan's annual Hankwang exercises, 20 warships, including frigates and destroyers, fired shells to intercept and attack a would-be invading force off Taiwan's northeast coast, while fleets of F-16 fighter jets and domestically manufactured Ching-Kuo fighters launched air strikes. French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived in Cameroon for a diplomatic trip around 3 African nations. After Cameroon, Macron plans to visit Benin and Guinea-Bissau. Macron is expected to meet with Cameroon's President Paul Biya and various members of the Cameroonian civil service. This trip to Cameroon, the first since Macron's re-election in April, will focus on the food crisis caused by the war in Ukraine and will also be an opportunity to prepare for the next Africa-France summit. Tunisia's President Kais Saied has been celebrating his apparent victory in a referendum on a new constitution that gives him almost unlimited powers. Mr. Saied appeared in front of jubilant supporters after an exit poll indicated more than 90% of those who had voted had supported the president's plan. The turnout was only 27.5%, with main opposition parties boycotting the poll. The president's opponents say his changes would just entrench the personal powers he seized a year ago. And finally, a 560-million-year-old fossil found in the United Kingdom has been identified by scientists as the earliest known animal predator. A group of paleontologists went to the site in 2007 to examine a site containing more than 1,000 fossils. Scientists have since been able to date the fossil by analysing radioactive material in the surrounding rock, identifying it as belonging to the Ediacaran period. The animal is related to a marine group which includes jellyfish and corals, pushing the known existence of that group back by 20 million years.
The early history of animal life is very poorly understood, and that's mostly because there are very few fossils preserved at that time. This fossil pushes back one of the modern groups of animals by 20 million years further back into time, and that's the group that included the sea anemones, the jellyfish and the corals.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. Now, women's 100 meters hurdles world record holder Tobi Amusan says it still feels like a dream winning the gold medal at the World Athletics Championships and smashing the previous record in the process. Amusan, who is now on her way to Birmingham to compete at the Commonwealth Games, spoke with our sports correspondent Austin Okonakman earlier.
A Nigerian has the world record
in the 100 meters hurdles. Her name is Toby Amusan. She's that young girl from Ijebu. How inspiring is this to you?
No, it's great. It's great. It's great. You know, I started off doing long jump, and then I went high jump, and then I started doing sprint. I know sprint was way too fast, and I was like, I'm gonna try something else. I know the minute I started ordering, I had a lot of you can, and I was like, see, y'all keep saying I can't. Maybe y'all want me to do it. So I'm just thankful to God that I chose that event. I mean, you know, it kept my path straight, and you know, things just worked out.
Toby, were you under any form of pressure before the final race? I mean, you broke the world record in the semis, so the thinking would be, how can she break the world record and not go on to win? Did it bring pressure?
Definitely. You know, the girls are looking at me and they're like, she must be tired. And my coach kept telling me, you know, everybody's looking at you now and they're saying you probably can't repeat it. Just go back there and act like it's the semis. And you'll be ready. Practice like we usually do. Nobody with you, just you alone and your others. I'm like, that's not possible. I was like, yeah, act like everyone is not, no one is in the race. You know, I just kept my calm because now the pressure is on me, the pressure is on everybody. But I use more of their pressure to my advantage, knowing that, you know, everyone is looking up to me in the finals. The only thing I can do is to stay calm and execute.
Glad you stayed calm and executed. But hundreds of South African football fans welcomed Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions Banyana Banyana at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg earlier today. That's a wrap on Sports News. It's back to Millicent with the news of time.
Thank you, Victor. And just before we go, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has ordered the deployment of additional forces to strategic areas in the Federal Capital Territory. This follows concerns over security breaches in some parts of the nation's capital. A statement by the force's public relations officer, Muyiwa Adejobi, says the Force Intelligence Bureau has also been charged by the IGP on robust intelligence gathering. He further called on residents of the FCT to synergize with the police and other security agencies to forestall any breach of security in the Federal Capital Territory. And the main news again, the Nigeria Labour Congress today defied the federal government's objection by staging a nationwide protest in solidarity with striking academic staff union of universities. They called on the federal government to act now and save the country's university system from complete collapse. That's news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Mwaka. Stay safe. Have a good night.